Hi friends, and welcome back to Country Legacy. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make Sloppy Joe sauce and how to can it. I will show you some tips and tricks that includes using frozen tomatoes to speed up the process of peeling them, and many other tips and techniques to expedite the process and make canning much easier. So let's not waste any more time, let's get started. So when it comes to picking your tomato variety, you can really use just about any kind of a tomato. And when it comes to making tomato sauce, a paste tomato is preferred, but you can really use just about any kind of a tomato. The San Marzano is one that I have here, and also the Roma tomato. You'll notice that the San Marzano is longer than the Roma tomato. And then there's the slicing tomato, which also works. But there's a lot of water inside of the slicing tomato, so it takes longer to boil it down, but it definitely does work. Sometimes I mix a few in if I don't want to waste them, or if I need to add to a batch of sauce and need a few more tomatoes. But I do prefer the San Marzano or the Romas. If you saw my garden tour earlier in the year, I talked about the San Marzano tomato and how that I had grown it in the past and had issues with it. Well, I can say that this year was a much better year. I did not have any issues other than the blight that I had with all of them, but they produced very well. I do like that they're a little bit bigger than the Roma tomatoes, so I think next year I may do like half and half, but we'll see. I've always grown Romas, so it's kind of hard to switch off after I've done it for so many years. So the method I will be showing you is a little different than some people do it, but it's becoming more popular because it's so easy, and I'm all about doing things easy. So if my tomatoes are coming in small batches, which that's the way it was this year, so it's hard to like set up and do a big canning day. So what I have been doing all summer is picking the tomatoes as they're almost ripe. I bring them in, I set them out on a table so that they can all ripen. And as they ripen, then I put them in a gallon-sized bag, and then I throw them in the freezer. And the cool thing about that is that they peel really easy. And I'll show you that in just a moment. But if you have tomatoes and you don't have the time to freeze them, all you have to do is put them in boiling water and blanch them. So basically what I do is I throw them in the water and I just watch for them to start splitting the skin, and I get them right out because you don't want them to overcook. Especially if you're going to dice them, because you don't want a mushy tomato when you're making the diced tomatoes. Typically what I do is I just pull the little stem off, and then I put them in the boiling water, blanch them, and then I core them and peel them. But in all honesty, it seems like every time I can, I do something a little different. But today I'm going to show you the method that I'm going to use this time. So I'm going to grab my roasting pan to put all of my finished tomatoes in. Now I should have cored these before they went in the freezer, but that did not happen. So I'm just going to cut that off. And you'll see how easy these peel. It just comes off just like that. And there's my tomato. And the nice thing is as you could see, it's releasing a lot of liquids. And you could actually squeeze that if you wanted just a little bit. But I'll be putting these in my roasting pan, and I'll be draining off some more of the liquid after they're all in there. And I'll show you that step later. Some of these are still partly frozen, and actually it works better for cutting the end off with a core in it. And it still peels pretty good. I rinse these off with hot water, but when they're partly frozen like that, it comes off a little harder, but it's still working. And I have the tomatoes sitting in a colander inside of a bowl so that they could continue to drain in there while I'm working on them. I better grab something to put all my peelings in. If you have the time and want to fool with it, you could actually take these peelings and you could freeze dry them or dehydrate them. And then you could turn them into a powder so that you can make like tomato soup with them, or any kind of a tomato sauce. It works really nice. I'm not going to take the time right now. They'll be turned into compost. Okay, I'm going to get the rest of these cored and peeled, and then I'll come back and show you how I drain this off and get them into cook down. So this is 5 gallons of tomatoes, and see how compact they are already, and they're not even completely thawed out yet. But see all this liquid that's down in the bottom? I'm going to take this over to the sink and drain that off. And as I go, it'll start to release even more, and I'll be able to take a ladle and remove the excess liquid that way. But it's amazing because they're frozen and mushy how compact they are. I took what would have been a full roaster and turned it into less than half of a roaster. Okay, let's get this drained off. You can see all that liquid there. And we was able to get rid of a lot of liquid. All right, I'm gonna get the tomatoes in the roasting pan. And then I'm gonna set the temperature to 350 degrees, and I'll keep a close eye on it because I don't want these sticking and burning. That's a lot of work to do to lose them. So I'll get the lid on it, and I'll probably check these at least once every hour, and probably in about an hour I can drain some more of that liquid off, but I'll check it and just see at that point in time. But we'll come back whenever it's cooked down a little way so I can kind of show you what to watch for. All right, I'm gonna get some of this liquid off of here. I'll just take my spoon and dip it down in there, and you can see there's some liquid there. By taking some of this extra liquid off, it will speed up the process. There, you can see I got a lot more liquid off of there. So at this point, because it's getting drier, I'm gonna turn this down to probably about 250 degrees. And I'm gonna leave the top off of it because I want it now to just start drying up a little bit. And so I'll keep an eye on it. At this point, you really wanna be careful it doesn't start sticking to the edges. So we'll come back as more of this liquid goes away. Okay, I have an immersion blender that I'm going to use to pulverize this and turn it into a sauce. Now that the tomatoes have had a chance to cook down, I feel like it's about ready. I'll know after I pulverize it. Other ways that you can do this too, you can put this through a tomato strainer, a tomato sieve, or you could put this in a blender and whip it up that way. Most people would probably run this through a tomato strainer, but I always try to take the shortcuts when I can, and I've done this before with this immersion blender, and it is, again, just another fast step. It takes a little bit to work this up to try to pulverize them little seeds, but it works very good and it's very quick. So I'll go ahead and use this immersion blender on it. It can be very messy. All right, that's looking pretty good to me. Get my ladle out here and just see, oh yeah. You can see how it looks nice and thick. And at this point, I can always cook it down more if I decide that I want to. But because I'm making this into Sloppy Joe sauce, I will add my other ingredients, and then I'll know at that point if I need to let it cook down longer. So the next thing I'm going to do is ladle this tomato sauce into this container so that I can measure and know how much tomato sauce that I have, so that I get an accurate amount of vegetables as well as like the apple cider vinegar and different things like that. So that will be the next thing that I do, and then I'll pour it all back in here. Okay, there's a little over 4 quarts. I'm gonna call that 17 cups of sauce. So I'm gonna pour this right back in here. As you can see, there are some seeds still in there, and I'm fine with that when I do my diced tomatoes or seeds in that. But if you have issues with seeds, you may want to go the strainer method to get rid of as many as possible. Or if you have a really good mixer, you can pulverize a lot better with that. But this works just fine for me. So this is the recipe that I'm going to be using, and I will have to multiply by 3.71 for my ingredients. But the primary things that I have to be sure of is the apple cider vinegar. There's other ways that you can do this to make sure you have enough acidity. You could put citric acid or lemon juice or something like that in each jar ahead of time. But by doing it this way, it can all be mixed together. All right, so I have some green peppers here that I had frozen. I just warmed them up and I drained off the excess juice. If you're using fresh green peppers or fresh onions, you'll want to pre-dice them and then put them in the oven to pre-cook them. You could actually cook them here in the sauce, but that's just what the ball recipe calls for. So the recipe actually calls for 6 cups of green peppers and 6 cups of red peppers. Since the sauce is already red, I like the color of the green peppers to just add some more color. So I'll be using mostly all green pepper, and I'm just going to go by looks rather than measure this because this part is not going to cause any issues. I just want to mix it how I like it. And you could do the same. I'm pretty sure it'll take all of these though, so I'll go ahead and put all of them in there. And then I'll stir them in and just kind of see what it looks like and then decide if I need to go get more. But it's actually looking pretty good. I don't know, I think that's good enough. So then the next ingredient I'm going to put in here is onions. I have some dehydrated onions that I dehydrated, and I'm going to use these. And again, I'm just going to go by looks. But the recipe does call for 2 cups of chopped onions. The dehydrated onions, whenever you put them in liquid, they pop back up. So it may look like I'm not putting many in, but you'll see that once they rehydrate that there'll be plenty in there. So I'll just start with that, and I do have a lot more that I can add in if I need it. A lot of times what I do is I get all of my ingredients in here and I go with a minimal amount, and then I just sample it, and then I adjust seasonings or I adjust ingredients to get it to the way that I like it, because everybody likes it a different way. But the main thing is to have it safe for canning, and I guess everybody has a different idea of what is safe. I think I'm going to add some more onions. I'm pretty sure it's going to take more than that. And the nice thing with dehydrated onions is that it'll thicken my sauce up more too, because to rehydrate, it needs moisture. Another thing you could do is if you have freeze-dried tomatoes or dehydrated tomatoes, you can add them, and that would help thicken your sauce up as well. All right, now it's time to add our other ingredients to this. I did turn the sauce back up again so that it can meld all the flavors together. And it calls for 4 teaspoons of salt. I'm using a coarser salt here just so that I can use up some of the salt I have, but it will melt and be just fine in this. And then it calls for 2 teaspoons of ground black pepper. One thing that I forgot to mention is that this recipe calls for 4 cups of tomato sauce and 1/2 cup of roasted tomato paste. But the way that I'm doing this, I'm getting the thickness right so that I don't have to mix pre-made sauce and pre-made roasted tomato paste. And the next ingredient is 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, and you need to make sure that it says 5% acidity on it. For safe canning practices, it needs to be 5% acidity. And then it calls for 1/2 cup of Dijon mustard. And then 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Okay, I'm going to stir this all together now. The reason you mix your tomatoes up first before you add your green peppers is so that you don't pulverize your green peppers with it. All right, so I have this set on about 300 right now. I'm just going to keep a close eye on it. I feel like it could thicken up just a little bit since I added that apple cider vinegar. It's not too bad, but it is a little thin. So I'm going to let this sit here and cook down while I go wash the jars and get them ready to start canning this. I'll get these jars washed up. Okay, I have all of my jars here washed, and I found this one unique one here. It's got a square bottom, and it's the Ball Perfect Mason jar. And I looked it up, and it's actually a vintage one, but I thought that was kind of cool. I have seen square ones before, but not like this one. So I thought that was kind of neat. So I'm going to put these jars in this pan, and that way I can add hot water to the bottom of the pan. And the reason for that is so that when you put hot things inside of the jar, it won't shatter. If you have a cold jar and you put something that's boiling hot in it, it will shatter the jar. I'm gonna get hot water in here. We're gonna put about 3/4 of an inch of water in here. Okay, I got pots over here and I got enough water in here to get them started. I'll probably have to add a little bit more to them. And then I have my jars here preheating so that they're ready for the hot sauce. And then I brought my sauce in here. And then I have my jar lifter. And then I got my funnel, a debubbler, my lids, and my rings. So I think I have everything here. Okay, I'm gonna get my funnel on a jar. And it says to keep it down 1/2 inch. So I wanna make sure that it's at least this much lower than the top of the jar. Pour it in. And a lot of times I get them too full. So I'll have to take some back out of that. But I'll wait till I'm all done because I'm sure I'll overfill others. I did sample this and it's actually pretty good, just like it is. So I'm gonna wait and spice it up more if it needs it whenever I make the sloppy joes, but just like it is real good. So most of the time I actually just put it here to the bottom of the ring and that's plenty of clearance. Okay, so I just have about 1/2 cup left. I'm gonna add just a tiny bit to each of them since they are all down. And then I'll take a tablespoon to pull some of this back out and add it to any of them that are still low. Now I'll debubble all of them. Basically, it's just stirring it to get out any air pockets. Typically with sauce, there's not too much of an issue with that, but I just don't want to take a chance. Now it's time to wash the rims on all of them. You just want to take a clean cloth and wipe them all off. I typically wipe them once and then I clean my cloth off and I come back and wash them all again. Now some people use vinegar to clean the rims and that's probably a good precaution. But I typically only do that whenever I'm cooking oily food, like if I'm cooking meat or something like that. But I feel like as long as it's clean, it's good enough, and I don't have any problems with them sealing, so it seems like it's pretty good. But again, I wash them twice. Okay, I have all of the jars filled. I'm going to get the lids on them. All right, we're gonna put our rings on to fingertip tight. So basically I just hold it up and you just use your fingertips and you kind of tighten it, but you don't ream down on it. All right, let's get these jars in here. Okay, so I got the jars in here and I have 4 jars in this other one, but the water level is low, so I'm going to add some very hot water to these to cover the jars. Okay, so I have water above all of the jars. So I'm gonna let these come to a complete boil and then I'm gonna set the timer for 20 minutes, but you'll have to check your altitude. It may be a different timing for you. I'm gonna get the lids on these, so they'll come to a boil faster. Okay, these are at a boil. I'm gonna set the timer for 20 minutes. Okay, so this one is done. I'm gonna take the lid off of it and turn the burner off. And then we're gonna wait 5 minutes before we take the jars out. All right, it's been 5 minutes, so I'm gonna get these out of the water. Set them over here on the towel. And one thing you want to make sure is you don't tip these sideways because the liquid that's inside of the jar could get up under the lid and that water on the top will evaporate. All right, we'll wait till the other one gets done and we'll get the rest of these out here. Well, there you have it, friends. We have 13 pints of sloppy joe sauce. There's many different spices that you can add to this. Sometimes I like a little garlic and a little bit of Italian seasoning in it. So I hope that you found this content helpful, and I hope that you decide to give this a try. It may seem complicated, but it's really not too complicated. I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you enjoy content like this, would you please consider subscribing so that you can join me here again next time for more content similar to this. I hope that you all are having a wonderful day. Bye for now.